The church bells tolled like iron warnings as Ethan Knight stood beneath the vaulted ceiling, his jaw locked, his expression carved from stone. Rows of guests whispered behind raised hands, watching the young CEO of Knight Enterprises stand beside a woman he barely knew. The chandeliers above scattered fractured light across his sharp suit, but nothing softened his gaze. He didn't smile when the priest spoke. He didn't look at her when she approached. Lila Carter's hands trembled beneath her bouquet, though she forced herself to walk steadily down the aisle. Her dress trailed like a ribbon of hope behind her, but the man waiting at the altar radiated only frost. She caught a glimpse of his eyes, cold, assessing, impatient, and something inside her faltered. She'd told herself this marriage would be a new beginning. His stare told her otherwise. Ethan's mind wasn't on the ceremony. It was on the will. His father's words still echoed from that sterile lawyer's office a month ago. Marry a respectable woman within 30 days, or forfeit the company. The board had expected him to panic. Instead, he had chosen the quickest option, an arranged union with the quiet, well-mannered daughter of a family friend. She seemed harmless, convenient, replaceable. The priest asked if he would take her as his wife. Ethan answered with clipped precision, "I will," like a man signing a contract. Lila's voice, soft but steady, followed a moment later. Applause rippled weakly through the hall. Somewhere cameras flashed. Champagne fizzed. A pianist struck a cheerful tune that felt entirely wrong. Outside, autumn winds whipped through the marble courtyard, scattering rose petals like broken promises. Ethan stood apart from her, greeting executives with a mechanical smile. Lila lingered at his side, awkward in her new role, the warmth she offered swallowed by his indifference. When the limousine doors closed behind them, silence thickened. She turned toward him, searching for some glimmer of kindness, but his gaze stayed fixed on the passing city. "I know this isn't ideal," she began cautiously. He cut her off, voice low and firm. "Don't mistake this for something it isn't. This is business. Nothing more." The words struck harder than she expected. She looked down at her wedding ring, suddenly heavy on her finger, and pressed her lips together to keep from trembling. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw uncertainty flicker across his face, a shadow of some buried hurt, but it vanished before she could be sure. By the time they arrived at the penthouse, night had fallen. The towering glass building reflected the city's lights, cold and distant. Ethan walked ahead without waiting. Inside, the marble floors gleamed like ice. Lila's footsteps echoed behind him, small and hesitant. At the bedroom door, he paused only long enough to say, "Don't expect more than what's written." Then he disappeared into his study, the door closing with finality. Alone in the vast silent room, Lila exhaled shakily. She refused to cry. Somewhere deep inside, a spark of resolve flared. He might have married her for power, but fate had a way of rewriting even the coldest contracts. The penthouse felt like a museum, immaculate, silent, and lifeless. Lila wandered through its cavernous halls in the days following the wedding, studying the sterile perfection of each room. White walls, glass panels, and chrome fixtures gleamed under harsh lighting, but there was nothing personal anywhere. No photographs. No warmth. It was as though Ethan had deliberately scrubbed all traces of humanity from his world. She understood then that if she was going to survive here, she couldn't let this place swallow her spirit whole. She began quietly. One morning, she rose before dawn and slipped into the kitchen, tying her hair messily as she searched through cupboards. She found flour, eggs, and a neglected frying pan. By the time the sun spilled through the tall windows, the kitchen smelled like butter and sugar. She plated the pancakes carefully and left them on the dining table beside a steaming cup of black coffee, the way his assistant mentioned he preferred it. When Ethan entered, his steps halted at the sight. Their eyes met briefly. Hers were tentative, his unreadable. Without a word, he sat, took a sip of the coffee, and left the pancakes untouched. Her smile faltered, but she didn't retreat. The next day she tried again. She replaced the cold modern flower arrangements with bright mismatched wildflowers she'd bought herself. She opened curtains that had clearly remained closed for years, letting sunlight flood the rooms. She hummed as she moved, soft melodies filling the emptiness. The butler watched in quiet confusion, and used to such energy. Ethan, however, responded with silence. Lila didn't give up. She discovered that his rigid schedule made him predictable. He returned home at exactly 8 every night, heading straight for his study. So one evening, she waited in the hallway wearing one of his oversized shirts she'd accidentally shrunk in the wash. She was trying to explain the laundry mishap, but when she turned a corner too quickly, she collided with him, sending a folder's contents flying. Papers fluttered like startled birds. For a split second, she caught a flicker of surprise in his eyes before he crouched to gather the documents, jaw tightening. She apologized repeatedly, cheeks burning, while he muttered something about her being a walking distraction and brushed past. The walls between them didn't crumble, but she noticed tiny cracks forming. He started lingering for a heartbeat longer when she spoke. His eyes, once dismissive, sometimes softened when he thought she wasn't looking. She sensed his confusion, a man accustomed to control, unsettled by warmth he didn't understand. One night, a storm broke over the city. Rain lashed against the windows as thunder shook the glass. The lights flickered, then went out entirely, plunging the penthouse into darkness. Lila fumbled for candles in the hallway and collided with a solid figure. Ethan caught her reflexively, his hands firm on her arms. For a breathless moment, they stood close, faces illuminated only by flashes of lightning. His heartbeat thundered against her palms. He stepped back abruptly as if startled by his own reaction, and walked away without a word. Alone in the dim corridor, Lila pressed a hand to her racing chest. Something had shifted, barely perceptible but undeniably real. The shift between them lingered like a charged silence, fragile yet undeniable. Ethan tried to bury it beneath work, doubling down on meetings and late nights, but Lila noticed the tension in his shoulders when he returned home, the way his guarded eyes occasionally betrayed confusion. She had become more than an inconvenience. She had become a disruption to the carefully constructed order of his world. And disruptions made powerful men uneasy. One afternoon, as she carried fresh flowers into the study, she paused at the sound of voices beyond the half-open door. Ethan's board members spoke in hushed, urgent tones. "He's distracted," one muttered. "The merger is slipping, and if he falters, we'll move in." Another scoffed. "That wife of his is already softening him. He's losing focus. It's time to act before he notices." The blood drained from Lila's face. She slipped away before they could see her, heart hammering. Their plan was clear: undermine Ethan's authority, destabilize his leadership, and seize control. She hesitated only a moment before deciding to tell him. Despite his coldness, she couldn't stand by and watch him be blindsided. When she found him later in the hallway, she tried to explain quickly, words tumbling out. But he stiffened almost immediately. "You were listening outside closed doors?" His tone sliced like a blade. "I heard them by accident," she insisted. "They're planning something against you. You have to believe me." His expression hardened, suspicion overtaking reason. "Or perhaps you're repeating what they told you. Convenient, isn't it?" The loyal wife suddenly bearing secrets. The accusation stunned her. "Why would I lie?" she whispered. "Everyone lies," he replied, voice low and bitter. "Especially when power's involved." Then he turned away, leaving her in the echo of his distrust. That night, sleepless, Ethan sat alone in his office. Rain streaked the windows, mirroring the turmoil inside him. Memories surged, his mother's gentle laugh, the way it had vanished after his father's remarriage, the betrayal that followed. Trust had always led to pain. He'd vowed never to be caught unguarded again. Lila's words had struck too close to that buried wound. Meanwhile, Lila refused to let his anger define the ending. She spent the next day preparing a simple meal, his favorite from childhood, a dish she'd coaxed the housekeeper into describing. She left it on his desk with a handwritten note: "You're not alone anymore." No signature. No plea. Just quiet sincerity. The gesture unsettled him. When the board tried to corner him at the gala that evening, their plot unraveling before his sharpened suspicion, he noticed her watching from across the room, calm and steady. And when she stepped forward unexpectedly, addressing the room with clear, unwavering words that exposed their scheme, The shock on their faces was almost satisfying. Ethan's gaze found hers through the glittering crowd. For the first time, his heartbeat stumbled, not from fear but from something he refused to name. She had chosen to fight for him, even when he hadn't trusted her. Something deep within him shifted. It wasn't love yet, but it was no longer denial. The aftermath of the gala left the air around Ethan electric with revelation. The board's betrayal had been swiftly dismantled, their whispered plots exposed under the glare of chandeliers and sharp truths. Yet what lingered most in his mind was not the political victory but the image of Lila. Standing poised and fearless in front of a room full of powerful men, defending him without hesitation. She had seen through the walls he'd built and chosen to stand beside him anyway. That quiet loyalty unsettled something he had long kept buried. He found her later on the balcony, wrapped in a shawl against the cool night breeze. The city glittered below, alive with distant noise, but up here it felt suspended. Just the two of them and the soft hum of wind. For a moment he simply watched her, noticing details he had ignored before. The way the loose strands of her hair danced in the air, how she held herself with both strength and softness. She turned when she sensed his presence, surprise flashing briefly before she offered a tentative smile. "I didn't think you'd come out here," she said softly. "Neither did I," he admitted, stepping closer. Words came awkwardly, halting as if unused to vulnerability. "Back there. You didn't have to do what you did." "I know," she replied. "But I wanted to." The simplicity of her answer disarmed him. He exhaled slowly, his usual defenses faltering beneath the weight of sincerity. "I've spent years believing trust was a weakness, that letting someone in meant giving them the power to destroy you." Lila's gaze held his steadily. "Maybe trust doesn't make you weak. Maybe it just makes you human." Her words lodged somewhere deep, unsettling and comforting all at once. For the first time, he didn't look away. The silence between them stretched, not cold this time but warm, fragile, alive. He reached for her hand slowly, as if testing whether the world would allow it. When their fingers intertwined, something inside him eased, a quiet surrender he hadn't known he was capable of. She laughed then, softly, unexpectedly, and made a playful face that caught him off guard. He found himself laughing too, the sound rusty but real. It startled him how natural it felt, how foreign and familiar at the same time. They drifted back inside, where fairy lights from the gala still glimmered faintly. Music lingered from a forgotten speaker, a slow tune that wrapped the room in intimacy. Without quite knowing how it happened, they ended up barefoot on the polished floor, swaying to the rhythm. There were no declarations, no grand gestures, just two people finding something genuine amid the remnants of a broken night. Ethan had spent so long being cold that he hadn't noticed how exhausting it was. Standing there with her, he finally breathed. The walls hadn't crumbled in an instant. They had melted quietly, one moment at a time. Sometimes love didn't arrive with thunder. Sometimes it tiptoed in softly, warm and persistent, until even the iciest heart had no choice but to thaw. And as their quiet laughter echoed through the penthouse, the future no longer felt like a contract. It felt like a beginning.